Welcome back. We are diving into chapter 2, which is called I Am, Therefore I Am Wrong, right? And when we talked about this, I think are we buzzing? Okay, we're buzzing. We're buzzing. When we were talking about this right before we started, we were looking at, okay, is there any part we would like to read? And we both fell for the same part. Do you want to read it? The very beginning?
Sure. Well, this is the, okay, I want to talk about it for a second because I've been using Access Consciousness tools for over 20 years, and one of the first classes I ever went to, Gary Douglas and Dane here said, oof, almost makes me cry. How many people do you have in your life that don't judge you? And the whole room, everyone's like, and I was like, I don't have anyone. And I could not come up with anybody in my life that didn't judge me. Now, that is more normal than it friggin' should be. Now, my life, very, very different scenario. So what if we were heading for asking to include people in your life and have people in your life who don't judge you? And we're so used to surrounding ourselves, family, friends, whoever it is, people who judge you, and making that more of a reality than what you could be choosing. That lightness of people just actually enjoying you. So this was a huge thing for me. So, chapter 2. So do you have somebody in your life that doesn't judge you at all? Even one person. If you have one person that doesn't judge you, do you notice how healing and nurturing it is to be around them? How after just 10 minutes in their company, your whole being and your whole body relax. What if you were that person? What if you were that this is me just not doing the book, doing out of school. But what if you were that person for you, and what if you were also that person for others? What would that look like? What would that be like? So can you imagine living in a world where there was no judgment? And that was one of the first things that was so appealing to me about Access Consciousness. Was the first class I ever went to was called Out of the Box, and Gary and Dane talked about living in a world with no judgment. And I remember sitting there just going, what? That's actually possible? You could live in a world where there was no judgment. And I had been completely surrounded by people whose point of view was judgment was about creation, which is such a misidentification of how we create. It's like we create by asking questions and choosing. And if every single one of you started to actually be that person, that one person who lived in a world who didn't judge themselves and didn't judge anyone else, what world would we create? What would that be like?
And I remember in the beginning, when I used to come to class, Dane used to ask this question. He would say, how many in here have somebody who doesn't judge you in your life? And people would put up their hands, and then he would say, and how many of you is that me or Gary? That is that person. And then all the hands kind of went down. And when I started to do Access, I literally thought my life was about getting everything right, not be wrong.
I never did that.
No, I know. No, it's just me, by the way. And I was looking at that today. I was reading this chapter, and I was like, most people in the world think that their life, the whole purpose of their life is to get it right, to be a success, to fit all the pieces. And then you get to this place where I think more and more people get to today. I think the world is getting to this place where more and more people are asking, is that enough? Is it enough for me to tick every single box and start to get my life right? Or is there something else possible? Because that took so much judgment. Everything was being judged according to if it was right or wrong. So yeah, and that's been one of the greatest changes of my life, to start looking at what if I didn't have to be right. So that was one of the questions actually that I was looking at. What does that mean, not to be right?
I'm not sure yet. No. No, this has been one of the things that I've looked at, I guess my entire life, and I wasn't really willing to look at it until coming across Access Consciousness and the tools, etc. Because And you know what? I can go into a reason and justification or something like that, but for you guys listening to this, a lot of the times throughout my life, I was made wrong just for being me. And it's like, how many of you have been made wrong just for being you? So what do you do with that? And it's like, your reactive reality is, I will get it right, I will get it right, I will get it right, I'll get it right. Like, I can show you I can be right. And it's like, what if nobody could ever make you wrong ever, ever again, and you never had to prove that you were wrong by trying to get it right? And I know that sounds really twisted. And the funny thing is, I heard Emily, Megan, and Dane all refer to something and go, I know that sounds crazy, right? But here's the thing. What if being you is the most normal thing you could choose? And it wasn't about being crazy. That was just, that's you. You get to be in this world today, and you get to be you, no matter what it takes, no matter what it looks like. And you don't have to choose based on, you know, will this person receive this? Will they accept this? Like, I was talking to someone the other day about how I literally used to choose, you know, boyfriends, etc. in my life based on, will my friends like them?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's insane.
Yeah.
That's crazy, you know? It's like, what if you actually chose someone who was fun for you to hang out with, you and your body to hang out with, but that was not my criteria. It was like, how do I get this right? Like, how do I get choosing someone in my life right while always thinking that you're wrong?
And even when you get, like, you start getting access to these tools about, okay, judgment is destructive. But then I started to judge me for judging me. And then I started to judge me for judging me for judging me. And then I judge me for judging me for judging me for judging me. It's like this eternal loop. What if that isn't even real? What if none of it is real? And what if that is actually a way of keeping you away from who you are and discovering that and exploring that? So this particular, like, the rightness, wrongness, that this chapter talks about is one of the ways for me that is most in the way for us to explore who we would like to be in the world.
Well, it has been, I'm going to speak on your behalf, it has been a pretty interesting hurdle for both myself and you to jump over, because it's not something, I mean, I've known
Still
Katarina,
jumping.
Yeah, still jumping, high, really high. And, you know, I've known Kat for quite some time, and when you have the point of view that you've got to get it right and you've got to be right in everything, you so don't want to look at anything else. All you want to do is wake up every day trying to prove that every choice you made is right. And it's one of the things that Gary Douglas said a long time ago is most people would rather be right than be free. And I listened to that over and over again and sort of was like, yeah, and just brushed it aside. Because it was like, no, he doesn't get it. Being right is really cool. Being right is going to create more freedom. It doesn't. And even if that's the one thing that you look at today is any area of your life that you're trying to control to get the result that you think is right, what if you just let it go? Like, what if you just, like, push down those barriers? And when I say push down those barriers and let those barriers down, you go, how the hell do I do that? Just give it a shot. Like, just try it. It's like, just literally right now, it's like, push down those barriers that you have against you and against the world, where you're not allowing yourself to be so vulnerable that you can have any choice show up. Not a right choice, not a wrong choice, any choice to show up. And every day, just when you wake up in the morning, just be like, you know what, I'm not doing this. I'm going to find out what it's like to be me in this world of possibilities without having to go to the judgment of what is right and what is wrong.
And one of the favorite things Dane says that I love is, I made more wrong choices than you've ever chosen. Because when this whole thing, when trying to get things right, and it's so insidious that it actually, the tool that, I think we heard it right before about what's light is actually what's true for you. But when you have this, like, desire to get everything right, it feels very light when you're right. So it's also this, like, it's so subtle. Rightness is so subtle. It's like underlining things. So that willingness to choose without having to judge if this is right or wrong, like, really start choosing to explore, that could be one way, just for today, to start choosing without knowing if that is the right choice. And the other thing we talk about here is the who does this belong to in this chapter, which also is like part of this. If you're right or if you're wrong, is it yours? Is that, whatever point of view you have, is it actually yours or something you bought from someone else? And it's at the very end part of it.
Well, who does it belong to? It's like, how much are you taking on the crap and the lies and the judgment of you, and it's not even yours? It's like, who does it belong to? Like, have you ever noticed when you're out in nature, you don't tend to have any judgments, and there's this space in your world, and you're like, oh, yeah. And you're allowed to admit it. Sometimes the world is a little bit too people-y out there. So when it gets that people-y out there, and there's so many people, it's like, how often is it that you're picking up on other people's, thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and their judgments that they're functioning from, and then you start going, oh, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine. And one of the first things that I ever learned at an Access class, I remember going to a 4-day class. Gary Douglas was facilitating it. I didn't remember a word that he said. We had this manual, etc. But one thing he said was, you're not as fucked up as you think you are. And I went, and I remember writing that down going, I'm not as fucked up as I think I am. I was like, I'm going to take that away. And I was so grateful because it was the first time in my life that I'd actually looked at that. Because my whole life I'd spent looking at how I thought I was really screwed up and I was wrong whilst trying to prove myself right. Whereas how much of that stuff is not even yours? Like, there's a space that you be. There's a space that you be when you are out in nature, like I said. What if that space was you? Just simply you.
And I'm so grateful you said that, because I was getting nervous and I was like having this energy of like, and then you said the thing about nature, and I can perceive how that like space of, okay, this is actually who I am, starts coming. And then I remembered El Lugar, who we been creating this eco resort in Costa Rica. And I remember spending a few days there and waking up in the morning. Eco. Not eco. Okay, eco resort in Costa Rica. Absolutely beautiful place. And I remember waking up there and having this space of me that didn't have any reference points for, was I supposed to be happy, not happy? Was I right or wrong? Was I supposed to do something, not something? I just woke up in a space of being, and that space had none of rightness or wrongness. And that is that space of nature that is so much more the space where I can perceive who I truly am. So what is that space for you? Where do you go to find that space? How can you tap into that space?
Well, I love that you said that. Like, what if what if there was nothing you had to do? Because how often do you wake up in the morning? Number one, litany of judgment. Usually it's about your body. Maybe it's about your relationship, your money situation, your business, your family, etc. And it's like, how many of you wake up in that litany of judgment and then also look at, oh my God, I've got so many things to do today. And you've got to tick off all these things to do, rather than, what if you woke up? Like, what I've done for the last few years is, before I even get out of bed, is I put my hands on my body somewhere and I literally be really present with my body and ask, okay, so anything that pops up, there's not like a right question or anything, but I might be wiggling my toes or my ankles or something, or even say hello to my organs, or just be like, hey body, it's like, who are we today, and what great and glorious adventures can we have, and be present with that. Not from, what do I have to do today? What if you change that to, what can I be today? And not from getting it right, and not from judging yourself as wrong. It is such a big trap in this reality. And if you look at the whole of nature, the whole of Earth, like, I always use that as an analogy for something to look at, because if you see, I've got, in my house in Australia, you've got the ocean crashing down, you've got the waves, you've got the birds outside, the trees, etc. And they are constantly interacting and engaging with each other, but not from, hey, you know what, you weren't here on time. It's like, the rain wasn't meant to be here, the bees were meant to be here. It's nothing about that. It's just about this interaction and engagement that nature can be with each other. And what if we could start being that interaction and engagement with each other that was based not on judgment, based on choice, allowance, and as we mentioned, one of the tools before is that lightness of you just choosing to be you, no matter what it takes and no matter what it looks like. You are not as fucked up as you think you are.
Yay! And I think one of the things that is in this chapter too is the difference. How do you know that you're not judgmental? And Dane writes, well, if you ever thought you're judgmental, you're actually not. Because a truly judgmental person just knows they're right. And like, I remember reading that and thinking, okay, I'm okay. I can actually choose something different. And one of the things you said with your body, what if we can use, we tend to judge our bodies a lot, and we actually get to that chapter right after this about the bodies. But
so keep judging your body now until we get to the next chapter.
Well,
kidding.
But what if we could choose to turn something that tends to be this subject of judgment? It can be body, it can be relationship, it can be success, it can be money, it can be business, it can be any of those areas. But what if we instead choose to do something different with that? What if we start to ask questions? What if we start to choose something different? And what if, for me, if you look at your body especially, that's the one thing you have with you your whole life. What if your body could be one of the ways that you actually tapped into you beyond that whole space of judgment? What if it could be your greatest supporter instead of your greatest subject of judgment?
So you just actually spoke about asking questions. And I know there's a lot of people who are watching this now and in the future who have used access consciousness tools. And then some people may come along and be like, what? What is this stuff? I know when I first came along, I was like, ask questions? Are you kidding me? It's like, you know, you grow up your whole entire life about having to find the answer, you know, especially at school, etc. And also, if you're trying to get everything right, you don't ask questions, you have to have an answer. You know, that's what is imperative, find the answer. And asking questions is such a different reality. And one of the things I've been looking at recently too is also not asking a question from expecting a certain result, like going, okay, I'm going to ask a question here. Like one of the questions we have in Access is, what else is possible? A second one is, how does it get any better than this, okay? So when people ask this, what else is possible? How does it get any better than this? It's like, how often are we asking that? But we're asking it from this realm of, I am expecting X, Y, Z. You know, you're sort of like, you're willing to receive more than most. What I'm going to propose is, what if you were willing just to completely destroy and uncreate how you ask a question, and ask a question from never asking from this permission to how to be. It's like really from greater possibilities. Like, would we all like a much greater possibility here on the planet? And for me, I know in the past few years, you know, since 2020, it's like so many of us have gone into question about, what are we doing? What are we choosing? You know, what if you started asking a question from truly what else is possible? What else is possible here on the planet beyond the rightness, beyond the wrongness, beyond the judgment? Like, it's up to each and every single one of us to choose that. And right at the beginning of the chapter, you know, we spoke about, you know, how many people do you have in your life that don't judge you? Well, what if it was okay that you just started with you? And what if you never, ever judged you again or anyone else? What if that's the demand that you made of yourself today? I'm never going to judge myself or anyone or anything ever again. And see what world we can create with that.
I think that's wonderful. Yeah.
Takes all of us.
And what else is possible?